All right, so we'll say good morning. Let us begin. Incredible day today. We are beginning in Meretz Hashem, the last daf of Maseches Pesachim. So we left off yesterday with an interesting piece on. So today's daf is Kuf Chaf Aleph 121. We are going to pick up in Meretz Hashem on daf Kuf Chaf Amud Beis. Begin by thanking our sponsors. To begin really by thanking all of our, all of our Talmud Torah sponsors. Baruch Hashem for the month of Nisan. To thank Czinn Teri Kahn Czinn for dedicating all the Shimmy Batsheva Messing this month in the schus of the birth of their first grandson, Adin Tzvi Hochbaum. To thank Benjamin and Elys Wohl from Eretz for dedicating the Shimmy Batsheva Messing this month in honor of all those who make the shiurim accessible to all those beyond the confines of the Beis Midrash. Specifically, to thank you to Moishe Abramson and to Jeremy Lasson. To thank Shimmy Batsheva Messing for dedicating all the Shimmy Batsheva this month in honor of the Bas Mitzva of their daughter Lilah, Mazel Tov, and to thank Paul and Kathy Pollack for dedicating the Shimmy Batsheva this month in memory of Paul's parents, Shmuel ben Zechariah, Leah Bas Avrohom, and his great-grandmother Tziril Bas Rav Dov. And to thank our Daf Yomi sponsors, Moishe and Abramson, for dedicating Perek Arvei Pesachim as a zechus for the Shlema for Daniel Meir ben Chana. Also, we thank all of our sponsors in the zechus of our Talmud Torah, all those who require refuah, shav one together with Kol Cholei Yisrael, and the Neshama Shav and Aliyah, the families in Nechama, and Emir Hashem Mishal Abi Zocha, to see the beautiful life cycle events of our children. B'Shah Tova U'Metzlachas. Mostly with that, let us begin. A lot to do today. Well, actually, not that much to do today, but we'll make it into a lot to do today in Meretz Hashem. So we are picking up, today's daf is Kuf Chaf Aleph 121. We are picking up on Kuf Chaf Amud Beis 120b. Amarava. So we'll say, we are picking up 2, 4, 6, 7 lines up from the bottom. Amarava. I will say, so remember again, we spent a significant amount of time yesterday focusing on the nature of the mitzvah of matzah and maror bizman hazeh. What's the nature of that mitzvah? So Rava says, achal matzah bizman hazeh. Rava says as follows: if you eat matzah bizman hazeh in this time, then ultimately again, if you eat matzah contemporarily, achar chatzos, eat matzah after midnight. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah lo yotzei dechavas. According to Elazar ben Azariah, you're not yotzei your mitzvah. Now, remember again, machlokis Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah about the consumption of carbon pesach. Right? When can you eat carbon pesach until? Rabbi Elazar, we saw this in yesterday's daf as well. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says you can eat it until chatzos. Remember again, little chazara. Why does he say until chatzos? Why? Excellent. Gzeira Shava, come on, we'll say. Gzeira Shava zeh. Right? Remember again, Gzeira Shava between Makas Bechoros and Matzah. Makas Bechoros happened at Chatzos. So ultimately, again, consumption of Matzah happens by Chatzos. Rabbi Akiva says, no, it's until dawn. Why dawn? Chipazon. Right? Again, just like Pesach was consumed by Chipazon, Ad Shas Chipazon. So the Gemara says that if you eat matzah bizman hazeh, we're going to have to start giving bechinas in Daf Yomi, because it works. It works for smichas chaver. So we're going to start with Daf Yomi as well. So I'll say, so interesting enough, so the Gemara says as follows. So the Gemara says, according to Elazar ben Azariah, if you go ahead and you eat matzah bizman hazeh after chatzos, according to Elazar ben Azariah, you're not yotzei. Because again, remember, that's the connection between Pesach and between matzah. To which the Gemara says, Pshita. Okay, it's obvious. Even the iskish la Pesach, Pesach dami. Let's say, obviously, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's pretty obvious. Halacha l'maisa, since matzah is compared to carbon Pesach, therefore halacha l'maisa, it's like Pesach. So the Gemara says, what would you have thought? Ha'afke kra mehekesha. Remember again, in yesterday's daf, we went through a very a back and forth limud by matzah, right? Remember what happened with matzah? We had shivas yamim tocha matzahs, right? 7 days eat matzah. Then we had another pasuk, right? Remember what was the other pasuk? Sheishes yamim tocha matzahs ubeshvi atzeres Hashem Elokecha. 6 days eat matzah, 7 days yom tov. So remember again, what do we learn from that pasuk? That really, just like matzah is a rishus on the 7th day, it's a rishus on all the previous 6 days. So then again, remember I also had then the Erev Tochlu Matzos, which once again said that on the first night, on the first night, Matzah is a Chi of Daraisa. So the Gemara says, I might have thought that because of all of the back and forth of the Psukim, that maybe matzah was removed from this comparison to Karban Pesach, to which the Gemara says, the pasuk went ahead and removed it from the comparison. Therefore, the Gemara says, well, if you take a look at the Rashbam says, 5 lines up from the bottom. Remember again, just to fill in the blanks over here. Remember, we start out with Amatzos Umram Yochlu, which links matzah to Karban Pesach. But remember, then once I have that pasuk of Sheishes Yamim Tocha Matzos, remember from that pasuk it turns out that matzah is a reshus, that matzah is optional, which again makes it sound like even on the first night. If that's the case, then it removes matzah from the matzah Pesach comparison. However, the Gemara then says, once the pasuk says Ba'erev Tochlu Matzos and reestablishes the mitzvah of matzah on the first night of Pesach, it puts it back into the comparison with Karban Pesach. And therefore, again, coming full circle, Rabbi Silber ben Azariah Shita, that halacha l'maisa matzah must be consumed before chatzos on the night of Pesach. So I both say, so again, we have two things that come out of here. First of all, a little bit of a review of the drashas, right? So remember again, interestingly enough, on one hand, matzah begins as a doraisa linked to Karban Pesach. Right, that's how this begins. Then there's like another pasuk that kind of sets matzah as its own independent obligation over 7 days. Then there's a third pasuk that goes ahead and makes matzah a reshus, right, the entire Yom Tiv. Then there's a fourth pasuk, Ba'erev Tochlu Matzos, that makes matzah a chiyuv d'oraisa on the first night. Now, what the Gemara is saying is, once we reestablish that matzah is a biblical obligation on the first night, what else does that do? It returns matzah to the matzah Pesach comparison as well. And therefore, again, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah will say, once matzah is returned to the matzah Pesach comparison, then just like Pesach has to be consumed by chatzos, so to what? Matzah has to be consumed by chatzos as well. Incredible. We'll say it's a shayla. I know what you're thinking. It's a shayla. Well, first you're thinking, when are we bringing coffee back to the shir? Right? Okay. So I'm working on it. I've asked multiple times. But okay. So again. You're asking, why such a convoluted limud? It's a good kasha. It's a good kasha because, again, I don't know like another place, not that I'm so well versed in this, but it's hard to see like another place where you have such a convoluted string of drashas to kind of bring you back to the original place. Again, it's a kasha. I'll try to look into it a little bit more. All right, so we'll say second anyway, that's the Al-Khan of Elazar and Azariah. Matzah has to be consumed by chatzos. And we'll say, this is indeed the halacha l'maisa for us as well. This is a very important halacha. We know this well. In Simin Taf Ayin Zayin, Shulchan Aruch writes as follows: Taf Ayin Zayin halacha aleph la'acher gimar kol ha'seuda. After we finish the entire seuda, ochle mimatzah shmur tachas hamapa kizayis kol echad zecher lePesach and echal hasova. So at the end of the meal, we eat afikomen. Right, this is what the Shulchan Aruch is referring to over here. We take the piece of matzah that has been hidden underneath the cloth, because you also remember again, we take the afikomen, right? We do yachatz, we break the middle matzah, we take the larger half, we wrap it up, right? For the afikomen, you have to wrap up the afikomen. The Brisker Rav explains that the reason why do we wrap up the afikomen? Both says it's quite beautiful. The Brisker Rav says because the afikomen is a remez or is a zecher to the Karban Pesach. Karbanos require shmira. You can't have hesach hadas. There can't be a lapse of awareness. Lapse of awareness by karbanos often invalidates them. The act of wrapping up the afikoman is an act of shimor, is an act of guarding there in order to prevent hesach hadas, lapse of awareness. Quite beautiful. So we mamish treat that piece of matzah like a sacrificial item. So therefore, halacha l'maisa, the Gemara says that we go ahead and we take the piece of matzah that was underneath the cloth. We eat a kizayis of it. Zecher lePesach hanechal al hasova. Okay, to remember the Karban Pesach. V'yochlenu be'aseiba v'lo yivarech alav good. V'yizor la'achlo kodem chatzos. So halacha l'maisa Shulchan Aruch says, and one should be careful to eat the matzah before chatzos. Shabbos say this is the halacha. Eat the afikomen before chatzos. Shabbos say, so again, taken from our Gemara right here. Now I'll just quote you over here. The Mishnah Berurah says, why do we have to eat it before chatzos? He said, "Ve'izor shekevan shu zeicher lePesach tzarich la'ochlo b'zman haPesach." Since the afikomen corresponds to the korban Pesach, you have to try to eat it in the same timing as the Pesach. VaPesach eino ne'achal ad chatzos. And again, apparently, we paskin like Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. That's how the Rambam adapts as well. That historically the Korban Pesach was eaten until midnight. Even though Rabbi Akiva says you eat it until dawn, we adapt the position of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Korban Pesach can only be consumed until midnight. Therefore, halacha l'maisa, we eat the afikomen until midnight as well. And I will say, interestingly enough, the Mishnah Berurah has a whole discussion over here. But v'chol shekein kezayis harishon shemavarchen alav al achilas matzah tzarich lizar me'oshel la'achar chatzos u'b'diavad. Listen to this. He writes over here, the need to eat matzah before chatzos is incredibly important. Not just the afikomen, but all the required kazesim of matzah need to be consumed before chatzos, to the point that the Mishnah Berurah says something very interesting. But let's say for some reason, your Seder was delayed. And ultimately, again, you don't get your mamish, like it's almost chatzos, and you haven't started yet. Listen to what the Mishnah Berurah says to do. Yikadesh v'yishte kos rishon, make kiddush, drink the first cup, v'yitol yadav v'yivarich hamotzi v'alachilas matzah. And we'll say, what should you do immediately after making kiddush? Eat your matzah. V'yochal, right? V'alachilas matzah v'yochal, v'agam yivarich al morer, take if kodim chatzos. Both say this is actually very interesting. What else has to be consumed before chatzos? What else? Maror. We don't think about this often, right? But it makes perfect sense because remember again, maror by itself is attached. There is no really maror by itself. I mean, we have it today midrabanan, as we saw in yesterday's daf. But maror is really tethered to korban Pesach. Korban Pesach has to be done by chatzos. So everything really has to be done by chatzos. So here you see the Mishnah Berurah saying that if for some reason your seder was delayed and you're starting close to chatzos, make kiddush. Eat your matzah and maror first. We do that first in order to get those number 4 chatzos. V'achar kach yomar ha'agada v'achar kach yitzod siudasa. And then after you make your kiddush, eat your matzah, eat your maror, then say your haggadah, and then eat your su'uda afterwards. And we'll say, now what's unique about this? What's fascinating about this? We just got finished yesterday talking about the last thing you're going to eat is your afikomen. Yet, interestingly enough, there appears to be an extenuating circumstance where you would eat after your afikomen. What's that case? That case where your seder got delayed until much later, where you have to get in your matzah before chatzos, but you weren't able to get in your meal. In that situation, you would go and eat later on, quite fast. So I'll just end off with one piece over here in this Mishnah Berurah, because this is so beautiful. He says over here, we don't make a bracha on afikomen. There's no separate bracha. And the reason Mishnah Berurah says is because it's just a remembrance. It's zecher to the korban Pesach. So there's no special bracha on it. But he says something so beautiful. Let's listen to this. Kasav Shla, he quotes over here the Shla who says as follows. Ra'isi mibnei aliyah shayu menashkin hamatzos v'hamorer v'chinasuka b'chnisasa b'syaso. So the Shla says, I've seen some Bnei Aliyah. We'll say, who are Bnei Aliyah? Bnei Aliyah, all of us are hopefully Bnei Aliyah. Bnei Aliyah are people who want more out of life, people who want to be more, people who want to live more, people who want to accomplish more, people who are always looking for spiritual growth. And the Shla says, I've seen these Bnei Aliyah, they kiss the matzah and the maror. They kiss your own, right? They kiss the matzah and the maror before they eat it. They kiss it. And he says, I've seen these same people that when they walk into the sukkah, they kiss the sukkah as well. And then when they walk out of the sukkah, they kiss the sukkah as well. It's like, isn't it interesting that what does it mean to be a Ben Aliyah? So what does it mean? It means to learn Torah 8 hours a day. Well, most of us don't have that luxury and that ability to learn Torah 8 hours a day. A Bnei Aliyah is someone who loves to be a servant of the Ribono Shel Olam, and someone who allows that love to come out in such a pure yet simple way. To kiss a matzah, I've heard of kissing a matzah, right? To kiss a matzah because I have the opportunity to serve the Ribono Shel Olam, to go out and relive that which happened to my people. What a schus, what a privilege, what an incredible opportunity. The Bnei Aliyah, they kissed the matzah, they even kissed the maror, they kissed the sukkah. That's the Bnei Aliyah. And so v'chein arba minim shebalulav. Apparently the Bnei Aliyah kiss everything, right? If it doesn't move, they kiss it, right? So the idea, they kiss the mitzvahs. They kiss the mitzvahs, like, because every single mitzvah is such an incredible opportunity to serve the Ribbon Shalom. So the Shlosh says, I've seen these Bnei Aliyah, and they kiss the mitzvahs. Right, so let's go back there. Says the Gemara. So remember again, we go on. So the Mishnah then said, Pigol and Nosar, go ahead and make the hands tameh. So the Gemara says as follows. So also remember again, we know what pigul and nosar are. So remember, pigul means if a kohen has an invalidating machshava, right? The kohen has in mind to go ahead and, let's say, consume the carbon at a prohibited time, or offer the carbon up in a prohibited time. Nosar is any carbonos that are left over past their prescribed time. So the Mishnah said that pigul and nosar are metamei adayim, which means if a kohen handles them, he has tumas adayim. I will say, this is midrabanan. This is midrabanan. Says the Gemara, Rav Huna v'Rav Chisda, Chad Amar Mishum Chashadei Kahuna, v'Chad Amar Mishum Atzlei Kahuna. So both say, listen to this. So Rav Huna and Rav Chisda both interpreted this. One opinion said because of Kohanim who are suspect, and one opinion said because of Kohanim ultimately who are lazy. Now, I will say, now, what does this mean? So we're going to see over here that they each apply to different things. Chadam kezayis, v'chadam kebeitza. One said that the shear of sacrificial matter to convey tumah to the hands of the kohen is a kezayis, olive's volume, and one said a kebeitza, the volume of an egg. Both say top of kuf chaf aleph. Chad tani apigol, v'chad tani anosra. And in fact, as we're going to see, there's no machlokes. They're actually referring to two different things. So we'll say one is referring ultimately to pigol, and one is referring to nosar. What is this? We'll say, let's analyze. Mandatania pigol mishum chashadi kuna, mandatania nosar mishum atzle kuna. So also listen to this. So remember, interestingly enough, what we have over here are, you see, the Mishnah kind of lumped them together. What the Gemara is explaining over here is there are actually two different gezeras. Gezerah number one is that halacha l'maisa, nosar conveys tumah to the hands of the kohen. So if there's leftover sacrificial matter, right, meaning karbanos, right, sacrificial meat, leftover past its prescribed time, and a kohen goes ahead and handles that, the kohen's hands become tameh. It's a rabbinic tumah, a lower form of tumah, but tumah nevertheless. That's halacha number one. Halacha number two is if a kohen handles pigul. Both say, now remember again, how does a carbon become pigul? That's in the mind of the kohen. The kohen had an erroneous mindset or an erroneous machshava during some part of the avodah. So two different halachas. What the Gemara now is saying is two different halachas legislated for two different reasons. The reason why Chazal manded Tanya Pegol Mishum Chashade Kahuna. The reason why Chazal legislated Tumah on Pegol was why? Because there were Kohanim who were suspect to purposely mess up karbanos. Then I both say, if you're a Kohen, why would you mess up a carbon? Why would you mess up a carbon? It's very simple. If a guy's coming, right, Ruvain the Yisrael is coming to offer up a carbon, and you don't like Ruvain, because Ruvain's just a bad guy, and he's harmed you and he's hurt you, and you're a Kohen, now you're in like a shtickle position of power. Because why? Because again, you could essentially invalidate his carbon. And what's the great part? He'll never even know. Right? Till you've messed him over and he'll never even know. He'll never even be able to go ahead and trace it back to you. So Chazal were concerned that there might be some vindictive Kohanim, Chashadei Kahuna, and therefore again Chazal said, well, if you do that, it's true, you're adversely impacting Ruvain, but you're also adversely impacting yourself, because now you're Tamei, and as a result of your Tumah, the Kohen is going to be precluded from doing certain things. So in general, we assume most normal people will only try to harm someone else if they don't harm themselves in the process. Sometimes people are a little bit, crazy, and they're willing to go ahead and be a bit more kamikaze in their approach and harm someone even to their own detriment. But again, in general, you can't legislate against craziness. That's a general rule in every legal system. So again, assuming that a Kohen will only be vindictive if it's not going to hurt himself, Chazal figured once he becomes Tameh, he's not going to want to do this. Look at the Rashbam for just a moment. Mishum chashadei kahuna. Gazru chachamim tuma shelo yipagluhu beratzon lahafsed es habaylim v'yomru shogegin hein. So once Pigel makes the Kohen tameh, the Kohen is not going to want to do this. It's not worth it. Because as much as he would like to go ahead and harm Ruvain, he's going to end up harming himself in this process. So therefore, again, that's Mishum. So Pigel is Mishum Chashadekuna. Back to the Gemara. Mandatani Anosar. And the opinion that said that Nosar conveys Tumah to the Yadayim, ultimately, again, is Mishum Atzle Kahuna. Ultimately, again, is because of Kohanim who are lazy. They're saying, what's the pshat of it? This one is a bit more self-explanatory. Look at the Rashba, Mishum Atzle Kahuna, Shelo Yisatzlu Ba'achila V'hu Adin Yisrael. Because we'll say, remember again, when does something become nosar? If it's left over past its prescribed time. So therefore, again, that could just be a function of laziness. So in order to go ahead and be mizaris the kohanim, to take care of whatever they have to take care of sacrificially in the appropriate time, so ultimately Chazal legislated tumah. Also remember again, tumah is the Kohen's worst nightmare. Because remember again, a Kohen was often supported by matnos kahuna, right? Different kohanic gifts. Those kohanic gifts had to be consumed in a state of ritual purity. So if you become impure, it's not just a pshat that it's like an inconvenience. It's really a difficulty. It's really a difficulty, and it could also impact you. It could also impact you financially, because the Kohen might have in his home items that require ritual purity for consumption, which means now if he becomes tameh, he's got to go purchase chulin. So therefore, again, these two things were legislated for two different reasons. So therefore, both what the Gemara is suggesting over here is Chazal legislated tumah for Pigel because of Kohanim who were suspect to mess over other people, Chashadei Kuna, and they legislated Tumah Anosar because of Atzlei Kuna, Kohanim who were lazy. So the Gemara says as follows, Chadamar Kizayis v'Chadamar Kebeitza. So similarly, again, one opinion said that it's the amount of a Kizayis that conveys Tumah, and the other opinion said it's the amount of a Kebeitza. So that's also not a machlokes. Well, it is a machlokes. The Gemara says, Mandamar Kizayis ki Isuro umanda amar kibeitza kitum aso. But also, here's what's something very interesting. In the realm of Isurim, an Isra Achila is almost always, what's the shear for an Isra Achila for something that's prohibited to eat? The shear? A kizayis. Right? You have exceptions to this, like on Yom Kippur, but Lamais in general, whenever we speak about an Isra Achila, it's always a kizayis. Tuma, I will say again, the minimum shear for an item to convey Tuma is Kibetza, right? The volume of an egg. So interestingly enough, the machlokes over here is how much sacrificial matter conveys tumah. Is it a kizayis or is it a kibetza? Ultimately, again, that machlokes is, do you look at this as an isra achila or do you look at this as an isra tumah? Because we also remember again, both pegel and nosar, you're not allowed to eat. So on one hand, it's isra achila. If it's an isra achila, then the shear ultimately should be kibetza. But on the other hand, you're telling me now that it conveys tumah. Well, if it's tumah, then halacha lamaisa again, it should be a kabeza. So both say, so that last piece is a machlokes. But it turns out that in fact there are two pieces of legislation over here. One that halacha lamaisa noser conveys tuma. That's because of atzlei kuna, the lazy kohanim, and or the less diligent kohanim, and ultimately again that pigol conveys tuma. That's mishum chashadi kuna. Incredible. Both say Mishnah. Beirach berachas haPesach. Pater es shel zebach. Rabbi said, interesting halacha. If you make the bracha on the carbon pesach, so this is talking about obviously bisman ha-mikdash. So what the Mishnah is introducing me is something fascinating, which is apparently when you ate karbanos, there were brachas that were made over a carbon, which is really quite fascinating. We'll see what they are in just a moment. But the Mishnah says, if you make a bracha on the pesach, you exempt the carbon chagiga, right? Pater es shel zevach. Then you exempt the accompanying carbon chagiga. Because also remember again, as we spoke about many times, with the exception of a year like this, when Erev Pesach falls on Shabbos, when you offered up your carbon Pesach, you would also be offering up a carbon chagiga. That chagiga would be the mainstay of your meal. That's the main course. And Pesach, remember again, was ne'achal al hasova. Pesach ultimately again was consumed for dessert, right? For dessert. So therefore again, you would have two different brachas. One on the carbon Pesach, one on the Zech, one on the Chagiga. We'll see what the brachas are in just a moment. So the Mishnah says, if you make a bracha on the Pesach, that takes care of the bracha on the Zevach, on the Chagiga. Beirach es shel Zevach. However, if you make a bracha on the Chagiga, lo pater es shel Pesach. ultimately, again, it does not exempt the Karban Pesach. Tiv Rabbi Yishmael. So both say, this is the position of Rabbi Yishmael. So Rabbi Yishmael says the bracha on the Pesach could exempt the Chagiga, but the bracha on the Chagiga does not exempt the Pesach. Take a look at the Rashbam for just a moment. Birchas HaPesach u Birchas HaZevach. This is really quite beautiful. Mefarish B'Tosefta B'Zvachim. Eize Birchas HaPesach. Baruch Ato Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam. Asher Kiddishanu B'Mitzosav V'Tzivanu. Le'achol HaPesach. Also, Halavai, we should be Zocheh Mir Hashem to make that bracha with Shem U'Malchus this year. So we'll say, so that's the bracha on Karban Pesach. Ezui Birchas HaZevach. What's the bracha on a regular Karban? Baruch Ato Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam. Asher Kiddishanu B'Mitzosav V'Tzivanu. Le'achol HaZevach. That's the bracha, right? Thank you, Hashem. Right, Hashem, you are the master of the universe, who commanded us to eat this Karban, this offering. V'hain Zevach. Hainu chagigas yudalit haba im haPesach. And this zevach, this carbon that we're referring to, it's the carbon chagiga. It's carbon chagiga. Now, interestingly enough, the Rashbam here quotes, Inami nedarim unedava shekrev erev haPesach v'ochlan b'leili haPesach. So it's actually interesting. The Rashbam adds in over here, maybe it could also be nedarim and nedavas. See, remember again, Bepashtos, a person made vows over the course of the year. So you don't necessarily run to the Beis HaMikdash every single time you make a neder or a nedava. Bepashtos, you would fulfill your nedarim and nedavas when you would be ola regel. So the Rashbam adds in over here, it's also quite possible that you'd be offering up your nedarim and your nedavas on Erev Pesach and consuming those as well as part of your Yom Tov meal. Again, this whole nedarim and nedavas piece becomes a little bit of a machlokas, which we're not going to get into. Let's just go into simple reading right now. That I have two karbanos that I'm making a bracha over, the Pesach and the Chagiga. And normally I'd be making two brachas. One on the Pesach, right? The Shek Shem Sav Zivano, Le'echol, what was it? Le'echol HaPesach, and then a second bracha, Le'echol HaZevach. Which Rabbi Shmuel says is once you make a bracha of Le'echol HaPesach, that includes Le'echol HaZevach. However, if for some reason you made the bracha of Le'echol HaZevach first, that would not include Le'echol HaPesach. So the Gemara would not include Korban Pesach. That's Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Akiva says no. Lo zupal terezu, for lo zupal terezu. Rabbi Akiva holds no. Halacha l'maisa, neither includes the other. Rabbi Akiva says they're separate, independent brachas. The Pesach can't exempt the Zevach, and the Zevach can't exempt the Pesach. You must make two distinct brachas. To which the Gemara says something very interesting. You must say fundamental machlokes Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shmuel. Says the Gemara something very interesting. Cheshatim salomar l'div Rabbi Yishmael zrika bichlal shvicha v'lo shvicha bichlal zrika. So also the Gemara makes an interesting observation. The Gemara says, you see from here that according to Rabbi Yishmael, zrika, we'll say there are two different ways that we do blood applications on the mizbeach. There's zrika, which literally means again to throw or to sprinkle is really the better term for it, and shvicha, which is pouring. Two different types of blood applications. So the Gemara says, you see that according to Rabbi Yishmael, zrika is included in shvicha, which means that technically speaking, if you were to take blood that was supposed to be sprinkled, and instead you poured it, you would be yotze. But the reverse is not true. If you were to take blood that's supposed to be poured, and you sprinkled it, that you would not be yotze. Now, both say, now where does the Gemara glean this from? Take a look at the Rashbam. This is really very interesting. Rashbam says, first Rashbam in the Gemara, Hachi Garcina Cheshtim Salomar, the Divrei Rabbi Shmuel, Srika Bechlal Shvicha, V'lo Shvicha Bechlal Zrika, B'Meseches Zvachim, Perek Beis Shammai, Sham'ina Leila Rabbi Yishmael Da'amar B'Pesach, the Pesach B'Shvicha, below Bezrika. So Rabbi Shmuel is of the opinion that the blood application of the Karban Pesach is done b'shvicha. The blood is poured by the Mizbeach, or by the corner of the Mizbeach, and not sprinkled. It's poured. The sign of Rabbi Shmuel Omer, Mitok Shenamar Ach Bachar Labmadnu, LeBachar Shatan Matanove, more than God Mizbeach, Ma'aser, fine. So I'll say, so now, let me tell you the rest of this outside. So the Gemara says something very interesting. The fact that Rabbi Shmuel holds that halacha l'maisa, the bracha on Pesach could go ahead and pater the bracha on the Chagiga, tells that to a certain degree, Chagiga is subsumed under Pesach. Which then tells you, Rabbi Shmuel says, on a blood application level, the same is true as well. The blood of Pesach is poured. The blood of the Chagiga would only be sprinkled. So the same way that the bracha of Pesach could exempt the bracha on chagiga, so too again, if you were to do the type of blood application for the chagiga that you were supposed to do for the Pesach, that would work as well. So although the chagiga is supposed to be sprinkled, if you poured the blood of the chagiga, that would work. Why? Because again, Rabbi Shmuel, the formulation is zrika bichlal shvicha. That ultimately, again, sprinkling is included in pouring. But remember, again, the converse is not true. Because according to Rabbi Shmuel, if you made a bracha on the chagiga, that would not exempt the Pesach. So too, if you were to sprinkle the blood of the Pesach instead of going in and pouring it, that would not work. The David Rabbi Akiva, but according to Rabbi Akiva, lo shvicha bechlal zrika, for lo zrika bechlal shvicha. But according to Rabbi Akiva, the halacha is shvicha is not bechlal zrika, zrika is not bechlal shvicha. There are two different processes, and ultimately, again, each carbon must have its own blood application done in its own unique way. So we'll say, I'll just point out over here, because this kind of concludes this particular sugya, the Rambam paskins like Rabbi Akiva, namely that halacha l'maisa on the Seder night, you would have to go ahead and make a separate bracha, both on your chagiga as well as on your Pesach. Now, I will say, practically speaking, it makes sense that the halacha follows Rabbi Akiva. Why? Why? Just on a basic practical level. Remember, I will say, how often is Rabbi Shmuel's case going to come up? Remember, what's Rabbi Shmuel's case? Your bracha on your Pesach is pattering your zevach, your chagiga. We'll say, what does that presuppose? That you're eating your Pesach before your chagiga. So let's say, remember again, we just saw before, we just saw this halacha. The only time that would ever come up is how? If for some reason you're running late. Right? If for some reason you're running late. Remember again, I will say, if Erev Pesach falls on Shabbos like it does this year, you wouldn't have a chagiga. Right? You wouldn't have a chagiga, because remember again, you can't offer up anything other than Pesach on Shabbos. So the only potential possibility that would come up is some reason you're running late. So the practicality of the bracha on Pesach exempting chagiga would have to be some type of extenuating circumstance. So Pashas, the normal order of a Pesach night was you were eating your chagiga first, and then you're going to have your Pesach. Again, remember, no one holds that the bracha and chagiga could part to the Pesach. So therefore, halacha l'maisa, the Rambam paskins like Rabbi Akiva, you make a separate bracha on both of your kabbanos. You eat your chagiga, bracha Hashem al kirim ha'chol shek sham zivanu lechol as hazevach. And then halacha l'maisa baruch to Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher kiddushav mitzvasav v'tzivanu le'echol ha'pesach. I will say, if nothing else, isn't it great to know the bracha that we're going to say on Karim Pesach? That's all. I say halavai, Mashiach comes and everything happens in a whirlwind, especially the week before Pesach. So again, you're going to know what bracha to say on Karim Pesach. It's incredible. We'll say Amud Beis, last daf of Meseches Pesachim. So the Gemara says as follows. We'll say a beautiful, beautiful Gemara. Rabbi Smaloi ikla lepidyon aben. So Rabbi Smaloi went to a pidyon aben. So we'll say we're going to see why exactly this Gemara is here at the end. So Rabbi Smaloi went to a pidyon aben. Boy minei. So they asked from him the following kasha. Pshita a pidyon aben asher kiddushav mitzvasav v'tzivanu a pidyon aben. So we'll say, goes without saying that on a pidyon aben we make a bracha. What's the bracha? Asher kiddushav mitzvasav v'tzivanu al pidyon haben. That's the bracha. Birchas mitzvah. Remember again, we redeem a firstborn child after 30 days. Sahalocha lemaisa. Again, that's the bracha. Asher kiddushav mitzvasav v'tzivanu al pidyon haben. So the Gemara says, Avi ben mevarich. Now ultimately, again, we know who makes the bracha of Asher kiddushav mitzvasav v'tzivanu al pidyon haben. Who makes the bracha? The father, right? Because remember again, the obligation to redeem one's son is a mitzvah on the father. However, listen to this. Baruch shechianu v'kimanu v'girnu lazman hazeh kohen mevarich or havia ben mevarich. Well, so listen to this interesting shayla. But remember, we make a shechianu, right? The same way you make a shechianu on any infrequent mitzvah, right? Any mitzvah that occurs only mizman lizman, from time to time, you go and you make a shechianu. So we'll say, what's the shayla? Who makes the shechianu on the pidyon haben? Who makes it? On one hand, do we say as follows? The Gemara says, Kohen mevarich or Avia ben mevarich. Does the Kohen make the bracha, or does the father of the boy make the bracha? So let's analyze this. Kohen mevarich thikamati hanu aliyadei. So do we say on one hand, maybe the Kohen should make the bracha because he's getting the benefit? I will say, what does it mean he's getting the benefit? Remember again, what happens at a pidyon haben? Where we put the baby, we take the baby in front of the Kohen and we say to the Kohen, listen, here's the deal. The baby is yours. Do you want the baby? Or do you want to go ahead and redeem the baby, transferring the sanctity of the baby onto the coins and the coins will be yours. So the Maisi, either way the coin benefits. Either he's got a baby or he's got money. Either way, it's a good day. And so the Maisa, do we say that because the coin gets the benefit, therefore he should make the shechianu? O avia ben mevarich dika avin mitzvah. Or maybe the father should make the bracha because he's the mitzvah. So I'll say, what's interesting about this is as follows. The shaila is the shechianu on the benefit accrued, or is the shechianu on the mitzvah? So we'll say, obviously, the bracha of Ashek Sham Salsav Tzivanu Al Pidyon Aben ultimately, again, is a birchas ha-mitzvah. That's clear. So, of course, the father is going to make that bracha because he's performing the mitzvah. The shaila is the shechianu. Is that on the hana, the benefit that's being accrued, in which case the benefit is being accrued to the kohen, or is the shechianu ultimately on the mitzvah as well, in which case, again, it's the father who's performing the mitzvah? To which the Gemara said, "Lahava biyadei." So remember again, this question. This is Rabbi Silber. He went to a Pidyon Aben, and when he was there, they asked from him the following question: who makes the shechianu? Lahava biyadei. So Rabbi Silber didn't know the answer. Also, Sha'al Beis Midrash. So he went to ask in the Beis Midrash. Amrulei. They said to him, Avi haben mevarich shtayim. They said to him, the father of the baby makes both brachas. The bracha of Pidyon Aben, and ultimately again the bracha of shechianu as well, because we'll say again, the way the Gemara is essentially pasking is that the shechianu is on the mitzvah as well. It's not on the benefit which accrues. The hilchasa and the halacha is avi haben mevarich shtayim. So we'll say the halacha, as the Gemara says, the halacha is that the father makes two brachas. So if you take a look at the Rashbam is very interesting. Rabbi Smaloi Ikla, see the Rashbam, it's right under the Gemara. Mishum da'ari mas nitzin b'shnei minei brachas ba'adam echad. So we'll say, before we get to this Rashbam actually. So here the Gemara ends off and we'll say this is indeed halacha l'maisa, that the Avi haben makes two brachas. He makes the bracha of Pidyon Aben, and he makes the bracha ultimately on shechianu. There's an interesting discussion in the poskim, I will say, about why can't you just have two shechianus? Right? Why can't you just have the father make a shechianu on the mitzvah and the kohen make a bracha, a shechianu on the benefit which accrues? So we'll discuss that in Mir Hashem a little bit more at the siyum. I will say, but I want to point something out. This last kash that we have in this Masechta is why is this here? Right? What a dramatic departure, right? We just got with the Mishnah was speaking about the brachas ultimately again on Pesach and on Chagiga. Why is this here now? So the Rashbam addresses this. The Rashbam says, Rabbi Smalai Ikla, Mishum da'ari mas nisin b'shnei minei brachas ba'adam echad, u'maisa echad hatalui ze bazeh, kegon Pesach u'zevach, shechagiga ba'im ha-Pesach, Mishum hachi naket nami lahai uvda da'avi ha-ben mevarich shtayim. So we'll say, interestingly, after Rashbam says, it's a very simple connection. What's the connection? What were we just dealing with before? Two brachas. That's all. The connection is two brachas. We're doing with two brachas. Bracha on Pesach, bracha on Chagiga. So too over here we're doing with two brachas. Bracha on Pidyon Aben and shechianu. But I will say, I'll share with you something absolutely beautiful. The Pnei Menachem. The Pnei Menachem says something incredible. The Sas Emes. The Sas Emes says something incredibly beautiful. The Sas Emes says, why is it that Meseches Pesachim ends with a discussion regarding Pidyon Aben? Listen to his words. He says, Dine Chazal, Amru Chazal, Shekala mitzvos shebnei Yisrael osim, osa gam HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So we have a klal, and the Chazal say that whatever mitzvahs we have, the Ribono Shel Olam performs the same mitzvah. So, for example, the Gemara says, we wear tefillin, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wears tefillin. Right? Every mitzvah that we do, HaKadosh Baruch Hu does it as well. So ask the Sfas Emes, what about Pidyon Aben? So we go ahead and we do Pidyon Aben, right? We redeem our firstborn sons. So how does HaKadosh Baruch Hu do Pidyon Aben? Well, so listen to how beautiful this is. Umitzvahs Pidyon Aben, mekayim HaKadosh Baruch Hu bazeh, sheyifte es b'nei Yisrael mehatzaros v'hagalos. Dichsiv b'ni b'chori Yisrael. So it says this Hashem is so beautifully. Just like we do Pidyon Aben, HaKadosh Baruch Hu does Pidyon Aben. Who's the firstborn child of the Ribono Shel Olam? B'ni b'chori Yisrael. Klal Yisrael. And whenever HaKadosh Baruch Hu redeems us from our suffering, and redeems us from our difficulties, redeems us from our challenges, that is when the Ribono Shel Olam does Pidyon Aben. And the Sfas Emes says, V'zeu haremez shebesiyum meseches Pesachim hakshura liyetzias Mitzrayim. Rabbi will say, when was the first act of Pidyon Aben? HaKadosh Baruch Hu has been poda us many, many times throughout our national history. When was the first Pidyon Haben that HaKadosh Baruch Hu ever performed for us? Yitzias Mitzrayim. That was the first Pidyon Haben. Ba ne'emar b'ni b'chori Yisrael l'chodesh Nisan bo nigal amiratz Hashem anu maskirim Pidyon Haben shifta Hashem Yisbarach Yisrael. So both say, Sefer Hashem says so beautifully that we end off Meseches Pesachim, right? We end off the Masechta that talks all about Pesach with the din of Pidyon Haben, because we recognize that the same way we perform the mitzvah of Pidyon Haben, HaKadosh Baruch Hu performs the mitzvah of Pidyon Haben. He also redeems his firstborn. B'ni b'chori Yisrael, he's redeemed us. And when was the first Pidyon Haben ever performed by the Ribono Shel Olam? Yetzias Mitzrayim. And we hope that just as the Ribono Shel Olam did Pidyon Haben many thousands of years ago by taking us out of Egypt, that in Eretz Hashem, b'mheira b'yameinu, there will be another Pidyon Haben. An even greater Pidyon Haben, the Pidyon Haben of the Mashiach, the Pidyon Haben ultimately of B'nai B'chari Yisrael with the Geula, the Pidyon Haben of going back to Eretz Yisrael, the Pidyon Haben of the Bayis Shlishi, and the Meretz Hashem should all occur b'mheira b'yameinu. Amen. I will say, I just want to give everyone an incredible Mazel Tov on finishing Meseches Pesachim. I will say an incredible accomplishment, an incredible, overwhelming accomplishment. Few things. Number one, if you haven't made your reservation for the Siyum, please do so in Meretz Hashem. It's going to be beautiful. The weather is going to be great. It's going to be a magnificent evening of celebration of our incredible accomplishment. We'll say, incredible Yashikoach. And to everyone, to the Chevra on Zoom, a great schus to learn with all of you. But I hope that those of you who are able to come back to the Beis Midrash, it's time to come back to the Beis Midrash. I know it's convenient, I know it's nice. But again, those of you who can't, of course, continue. But those of you who can, we're ready to welcome you back. Those of you who will come every morning to the Beis Midrash, we'll say it's an incredible schus to be able to learn with all of you, and an incredible schus to continue to shtay. You know what we've seen throughout this last year, it's hard to believe that we're more than a year now into this pandemic, and the one thing that has never ceased has been the daf. The one thing that has never taken a break, the one thing that has never been furloughed, right? The one thing that has never gone on hiatus has been our Talmud Torah. Day after day after day after day. There is a vaccine, there's not a vaccine, right? 6 feet, 3 feet, 3 masks, 4 masks, 7 masks, whatever it is, doesn't make a difference. The daf doesn't change. The daf doesn't change. Because that's what it means to be Amal B'Torah. No matter what's happening, I show up, it's me, it's my Gemara, it's a beautiful Heilig Chevra, in person, online, all of us learning together. And I will say, I hope you take the time to give yourself an incredible Yashar Koach as well. Because again, for me, Baruch Hashem, I get to show up here. This is my day job. Baruch Hashem, I have the easy part in all of this. For you, you have to go to your day job after this, right? After waking up in the wee hours of the morning, where you're not sure if it's morning or if it's night, to plug away in the Ribono Shel Olam's Torah, to be exhausted come the end of the day because you started your day so early. It's all of you who get the incredible Yashar Koach. All of you. For me, this is not Mesiras Nefesh. For me, this is my job. This is what I have to do. But for all of you, you get the credit for the Mesiras Nefesh. You get the credit for the Amelus Batorah. You get the credit for starting your day B'Kedusha Ubitara, and in the schus of the incredible Mesiras Nefesh of this Chevra. Again, both the ones who are here and the ones who are online, in Meretz Hashem, we should truly be zocha to that Pidyon Haben. We should truly be zocha that in Meretz Hashem, when we get to the Seder, I'm so tired of eating the afikoman. That's Zecha l'Karban Pesach. So done. Zecher is so last year, right? So last year. We're done with the Zecher. We're done with the afikoman. Halavai, we should be zocha. Then in the schus of our amelus, in the schus of our learning, in the schus of this beautiful chevra, that we should be zocha Meretz Hashem to hold our peace of Karban Pesach and say, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, asher kiddushav misazav zivano lechol asat Pesach. We should be zocha Meretz Hashem to do it with our entire mishpacha, with all of Klal Yisrael. But no matter where we are, here, in Meretz Hashem B'Shatom Mustachas in Yerushalayim, one thing is clear, is that we will continue to learn together in Meretz Hashem for many years to come. Tomorrow we begin Shkalim. Right? Mazel Tov on Shkalim, Meretz Hashem. Let's say, incredible new Masech, the new journey.